It seems like, dear noble ones, that we have a video telling us an excellent way to learn languages and particularly vocabulary. Well, let's check it out. So who is it that we are reviewing? We are looking at, this is called Story Learning Podcast and Ollie Richards. So it must be like a second channel by Ollie Richards. And we have, of course, reacted and provided commentary to a few of his videos. But I was intrigued by the title. This simple reading habit will 10 times your vocabulary. So increase your vocabulary 10 times. Now, is this an exaggeration for clicks or is it actually going to be legit? Let's have a look.
And the objection here is, well, but that's boring. It's like, yeah, it's boring, but do you want to get better or not? Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Story Learning Podcast. Hope you've been having a great week. I've been having a really interesting time with language learning recently, as I mentioned in a previous episode. I'm looking forward to telling you all about that, but I hope your language learning is going well and that you're enjoying it, because that's the whole point.
Yes.
Now, today we've got a question about reading and specifically rereading. Now, why on earth would you reread anything? Why would you read something and then read it again? Well, it turns out there's a very, very good reason. And so the question for today comes from Bogdan Bagrovsky, 2032 on YouTube. And Bogdan asks, is rereading the same as regular reading? So if I have scientific books and I want to remember as many words as I need, is it better to read the same book again and again, or is it better to read something else in the field but not the same book? So the idea here is, if you want to get good at a certain area of language, should I just take the same book and read it over and over and over again, thereby getting repetition, or should I take a number of different books on that same topic and read all those different books? And I really like this question because it really gets to the heart of how language learning actually happens. And breaking news, it doesn't happen the way that you got taught at school with those.
Yeah, the school thing, I agree. Personally, both things are viable. They are slightly different in terms of possible results, but they're both viable. Let's see what he thinks is better. But he's right that conventional learning is awful when it comes to school in a lot of countries, and there is a reason for it. And I'm thinking I should probably make a dedicated video because I know that one very well. I used to teach in school, but I don't want to speak too much right now, so let's go.
Lists of words and those long grammar textbooks and stuff like that. So reading and rereading. Now, we at Story Learning are probably best known for our short story books, and at the beginning of each of the books is something called the 6-step reading process. And I often get emails about my books saying specifically, Ollie, I really liked the 6-step reading process at the beginning of the book. It's just 2 pages. It's not very much, but it shows you the best way to read if you are wanting to learn a language through reading, and if you are still getting to grips with reading. And specifically, a lot of what I talk about in there is the power of repetition, because people tend to, when they read, they tend to go into intensive study mode, right? So they start reading a book or a chapter, and they get to the end of the first sentence and they realize there's a whole bunch of words I didn't understand. So what they do is they go back and they start to look up words in the dictionary, and before you know it, an hour has passed and you've looked up like 100 words and you haven't got past the first page. That's no good. And so then people hear, okay, well, you have to do extensive reading, which means you have to kind of read as much as possible.
Let me just underline one thing, though. It's not that I'm trying to disagree for the sake of disagreeing, but it's not that it's not good, what he just mentioned. It's just that it's not the only thing that you can do when it comes to picking up vocabulary from a book. And also, I know I'm going to be a little pedantic here, but that's my middle name. You know when he said if you're trying to learn a language by reading, well, that's impossible, by the way. It's just that reading is a tool that you can use within your arsenal of many different techniques and tools and skills that you need to develop in order to master the language. When we say usually, though, to learn a language, most people don't mean that they want to be able to translate a written sentence and write it down, translate it. I mean, maybe that is what you want, but generally speaking, when people say they want to pick up a language, they want to learn a language because they want to what they mean is that they want to be able to speak, understand, and answer questions and speak back and have a conversation. So if that's your goal, while reading can be a good tool for increasing vocabulary, learning grammar in a way that it's, feels like, okay, it's a conversation, so I understand how it's going. It's fine, it's good. But you shouldn't put too many resources and time into that if your goal is to speak. At that point, you have to speak. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not the most effective. It's a tool. What he just said now, though, if you spend an hour and write down, just on one page, but you write down a lot of new words and look them up, it's not bad. He said it's not good. It's actually fine. It's just that it's not the only thing that you can do, and you should what it's not good. So I kind of break a lance in his favor. I'll just say that I'm still on his argument. Maybe what he's saying is that it's not good if that's the only thing you do when you're trying to do reading practice. Then I would agree with him, because there are many other things that you could do, such as, for instance, what he's about to say now, so continuing to read and extending and maybe making it less of an intense process in the sense of writing down notes and whatnot. But I want to put words in his mouth. Let's see.
Then you will learn by osmosis. And so they read and they read and they read and
By
they read
osmosis,
and they read,
yeah.
But then they wonder why nothing goes in. So you've swung the pendulum from one end to the
True.
other. So
Sure.
what do we actually want to do here? And in Bogdan's case, he's got these scientific books that he wants to read. I'm
Yeah.
going to assume here that he wants to get good at his particular area of expertise. What
Yeah,
should he be
technical.
doing? Reading the same book over and over, or reading lots of other books? So my general position here is that repetition of reading is very, very important when you're first getting started and when you're first finding your feet in the language, but it's less useful as you move up,
I can agree with that.
as you get more advanced. And so let's talk about this. When you are first getting started, there's a lot of stuff you don't understand, and one of your big jobs is to get used to the way that the language works.
Yeah.
And there's so much you don't know that every time you move on to something new, it's just like wiping the slate clean and starting from the beginning. But when you read something and read it again, the second time you go through it, you start to notice more patterns.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you read it the third time or the fourth time or the fifth time, you notice more each time. So repetition is actually a very, very effective strategy for just getting to grips with the language. So one of the things I recommend in this 6-step reading process in my books is that when you get to the end of a chapter, the first thing you do is you go right back to the beginning and read it again. And the objection here is, well, but that's boring. It's like, yeah, it's boring, but do you want to get better or not?
I don't like that comeback. You shouldn't say it's boring. Make it not boring. Choose a subject. It should never be boring, okay? So this idea, what he just said, I'm going to have to disagree with Ollie here, at least in the way he presented it. Maybe if we were in an actual conversation and he listened to my comeback, he would agree with me and rephrase. So I'm not saying that what he's teaching is incorrect, but I'm saying as it has been transmitted right now, it's telling you something that is in fact typical of the conventional learning method, which we all know it doesn't work, him included, because he complained about school. What school does is you got to do these exercises. They are boring as hell, but you have to do it because that's what it means to study. You have to have a horrible time, sit down, do something you don't want to do, but at the end you'll reap the rewards, these rewards never happen because that's not how the brain works. We need to stimulate the brain with whatever we do when it comes to language learning with fun and interesting content. So if you're reading this book, read the first chapter and it was a freaking chore, and now that he tells you, well, read it again, you're like, no, my gosh, that's boring. The answer to that, Ollie, it's not to say, well, it's boring, but do you want to get good or not? No, that's not how it works. This is exactly what you just complained about and teachers do in conventional learning methods. No, the reality is, okay, well, if you found it boring, change book. You need to find something, whether it be a book, a video game. At this point, it doesn't even need to be a book. It can be any medium. It can be a video game. It could be a movie, anything with subtitles. Anything that you find more interesting, maybe a topic you like. Because once you do that, then I can assure you that you will not think it's boring to go back and do it 3 times in a row. You're going to love it because you enjoy and you're interested in the topic and you like the format. So once again, do not tell your students, it is boring, but you want to be good or not. That's the wrong approach from a teaching method. Because no, you need to stop and analyze, why does this student specifically, or this client of mine, find this exercise boring? Because there is a problem with the exercise. Maybe not necessarily because the exercise is always wrong, but maybe it's not the right fit to this student. This is teaching.
And it's by going back and reading that again that you're going to start to notice more things. And it is the noticing that is one of the key things with language learning.
Sure.
It is your ability to spot new things that you hadn't seen before or didn't know before. Spot that stuff by yourself, because when you can do it by yourself, you don't need people like me telling you what to do, because you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the beginning, when you're first getting used to reading, what you're trying to do is just develop this stamina, developing the ability to read, enough general knowledge, just enough general facility with the language to be able to handle it and get used to it. But as you get more advanced, it changes a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the more advanced you get in a language, the more you have to learn. And it's an exponential curve. With every language level that you move up, I like to say that it takes about twice as long as the level before that. So
Little generalized, particularly when you look at the European frame of reference, but I'll accept it and stop being pedantic for a second.
B2 takes twice as long as B1. C1 takes twice as long as B2.
I think it takes longer than that. Sorry.
And so on and so forth. Which means one of the key things that we've got to do as we get more advanced in a language is read as widely as possible. Because quite simply, if we don't read as widely as possible, we ain't never going to get nowhere. That's some quality grammar right there. Do you know what I mean? If you don't read widely, you're never going to encounter enough language to learn enough stuff to improve in the first place. So we need to read more widely. And so this gets us to a concept called narrow reading. I first encountered this from the great Stephen Krashen. And narrow reading is the concept of reading multiple books by one author or multiple books around the same topic. So we're not reading the same book over and over again. We're also not just reading lots of random stuff all over the place, but rather we are reading around the same topic or by the same author, because that way a lot of it's going to be familiar, and you get that same familiarity that you would get from rereading a book, except you get it from material that's actually new. And this is just more effective over the long run because you're going to encounter a lot more stuff.
So up to now, it's fine. There was a big area of disagreement, methodologically speaking, but generally, it's fine. But we are 6 minutes in out of 9 minutes video, and he still hasn't explained why it is 10 times, because that sounds a little bit like nonsense now. Not that I don't use my own clickbaity titles at time, but then again, why is he saying that that's going to be 10 times better in terms of vocabulary? Because so far...
And you're going to learn faster. So the answer to Bogdan's question essentially is, when you're a beginner, you want to reread a lot of material. But as soon as you start to get more advanced, around the intermediate level, you want to start reading in themes, narrow reading in themes or by the same author. And that's going to help you both get that repetition in there as well as encountering enough new material.
I'm fine with that.
Learning.
Yeah.
Now, what should you do when you are rereading or when you're reading around a different topic? Essentially, the strategy doesn't change. I mean, the major thing to be aware of with reading is that you don't want to read intensively. Right? You don't want to be looking up every single new word. You want to cover as much ground as possible.
I disagree with that. I think it depends. Both can be viable. That's fine, just as long as you don't just do the intensive reading. But intensive reading can be good. Rather than saying, hey, look, I did 10 pages. Well, why not doing just 1 page, but learning every word on it? It's really a case by case. I don't know why, so I did not misrepresent. He's literally saying that's bad. I do not believe it's bad. I think it's case sensitive. It depends. The only way I could see it being bad is if that's all you do, but that's not really what he said.
Key. So the magic formula is essentially step 1, you find something that is of interest and at your level as much as possible. And then step 2, you try to read the whole thing through. And whether you're kind of rereading it or reading something new, you just don't want to stop and look things up. A technique that often gets talked about, and I'm a big fan of, is simply reading with a pencil or a pen. And as you're reading, if you spot words coming up over and over again, the same word appearing 3, 4, 5 times, you can just underline that so that you can find it later and then move on. And then what that does is it makes it so that you're only focusing on high frequency words. Because if something comes up 3, 4, 5 times in one chapter, it's quite likely to be important, right? If you're telling a story about a pirate and the word pirate keeps coming up, well, that word pirate there is probably quite central to the story. And so what we're doing is we're kind of reading broadly, but with intention, and we are noticing. So just having a pen or a pencil to underline interesting things is just our way of actually focusing attention. And I remember doing this narrow reading. I remember doing this a lot when I was learning Japanese for the 3rd or 4th time, and I started. It was back in like 2016, 17, and I was really into language acquisition at the time, and I decided to read in Japanese about language acquisition. And it was fantastic because with every different paper that I read, every article that I read, we used the same technical terms. And they are quite technical terms.
Yeah.
They would keep coming.
Like gakushu hoho, for instance, instead of benkyou suru or manabu. Yeah.
Up over and over and over again. And it was brilliant because I was just able to indulge my interest in the language and in the topic while also picking up vocabulary. And it was just very useful. Now, whenever you are setting out to do something like this, let's say, okay, well, I want to read 5 books on this one topic, or I want to read this one book
Yeah.
10 times, because I know that's going to reinforce lots of things. We always want to work from the principle of setting goals.
Sure.
Intentionally
Goals are good.
saying, okay,
Yeah.
I want to do this. This is the result I want. This is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And these are the things I need to do every day in order to get there. And I have a free language goal planner that helps you do exactly this. It helps you it guides you through the whole process of setting language goals and then tracking your progress so you can stick to those goals and get results. This little bit of intentionality can really make a difference. So if you'd like to get the Story Learning Language Goal Planner, you can simply look for the link in the description. There may or may not be a QR code on the screen. I'm not sure if we're doing that yet with these videos. If not, we will be soon, and you can grab that for free. So I hope that gave you some inspiration for reading, rereading, or narrow reading. Take your pick. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast.
Okay, well, I mean, so he never actually justified this 10 times the vocabulary. I think it was a little bit of a clickbait, but once again, who am I to judge? Still, there was a bit of disagreement there with Ollie. Not that it's a new thing, though, because with Ollie, that's how it is. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I disagree. I think we see things a bit differently, not necessarily when it comes to language learning itself, but how to teach the students. But then again, to each his own. Let me know what you thought, and thank you for watching. Bye.